especially at the beginning of the shoot, I was so just intimidated by the vastness of the job. I feel like I was starting and far too, I think, conscious to think about that. As the shoot went on and I was beginning to sort of gain a little bit more confidence, I was able to sort of look outwardly and really sort of respond to that.
I got to say, I was not familiar with the opera ahead of time, but found the story very fascinating and the way it plays out very interesting. You are, of course, are no stranger to the world of the stage, but what about the film really sparked your interest to want to be a part of it?
Oh, thank you for saying that. I mean, it's a really, it's lovely that you had that experience with it. That's exactly, I think, what I would like from the film, is to sort of invite people into that world, especially if it's one that they're not so sort of familiar with, I think. And it's part of the reason why I wanted to sort of get involved. I think as actors, when you sort of start out, you have such little control over the projects that come your way. But there was something about this that I was really, really interested in. And when I met Florian, the director, and the producers, it was their sort of passion about what they wanted to make and this cool idea about introducing this to more people that made me really inspired and wanting to sort of get on board with that.
Now, as someone who does come from the stage, though, were you familiar with the play already, or the opera already, or was this new for you as well?
It was very new for me. I was familiar with it in that, so my mum teaches piano and teaches singing, so I knew of the opera, and I remember there were like posters on the wall of her favourite productions of it, which were quite scary, actually. Like some of the imagery was like quite like the Queen of the Night and the Hall of Stars. It was like quite intimidating, but so yeah, I had a fair amount of knowledge about it, but to be honest, the genre, sort of the opera world, I found quite intimidating. I think I was a little bit scared of it. I didn't know if I was sort of clever enough or if I was allowed in. It felt like there were lots of sort of doors in the way, or that I just wouldn't be interested. And I mean, part of this whole journey has been completely upending that, and it's completely fascinated me. So yeah, I really love this story now, and I really love everyone's different interpretations of what this sort of magical world could look like. You know, I think it's really, really cool.
I love that you got to have that experience, especially given that this is your feature film debut as an actor, which is pretty crazy. And it's interesting that it is sort of still this operatic type thing after your work on stage. What did that make the transition from stage to film acting a little easier for you to have still that sort of play in the background?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it probably did. There's this amazing thing on a film set like that, I guess, where it's so high fantasy. It's like we were shooting in the Bavaria Film Studios, which was so amazing. I mean, it was like even the drive to the studio was cool because it was like constantly snowing when we were shooting there. So it was really, really cool. But then in the studio, we sort of came down from dressing rooms onto the soundstage. So it was almost like they just built this set for this production of the Magic Flute when we were shooting the sort of fantasy world, the magic world scenes, which we shot first. And yeah, it felt like that. It did feel like a theatre set. And when I was walking up and down the corridors in the morning, like nervously pacing, ready to start my day, like you'd hear Sabine Devilliers practicing her arias, or Maurice Robinson practicing his arias. And these were, you know, the real deal opera singers. And it felt sort of like I was backstage at a theatre a lot of times. So yeah, it did really help. And I think it wasn't just my feature debut. I think it was the feature debut of lots of different actors from lots of different genres of the arts as well. I think shooting during, you know, the aftermath of COVID, I think for so many productions was so difficult, as we know. And we're now seeing like all of that labor come onto screen now. We're now seeing the films that were shot at that time and the sort of limitations that brought with them. A silver lining we had for our production is that because there was no live theatre, there were, you know, Sabine and Maurice from the Met or from Paris were free, and recording artists we have in the film and actors who've done, you know, mostly theatre work or mostly screen or mostly film all got to collaborate together on this film, which ultimately is a homage to a live form. So like that sort of isn't lost on me. I think that's a really cool thing that I love about our film. So it's a bit babbly, sorry.
No, it's all good. You're passionate about it. I love that. And kind of like you say, I'm actually surprised that despite the limitations that a COVID production can present, this thing it feels grand and feels like a large scale. And I'm curious if there was any one set that you loved to be on in particular during filming.
It was all amazing. I think I was at the beginning of shooting as well. We were shooting in these market scenes and that were built in the soundstage in Munich, and they were just amazing. The sort of the work that goes in, from all of those departments is so mind blowing. But I think especially at the beginning of the shoot, I was so just intimidated by the vastness of the job. I feel like I was starting and far too, I think, conscious to think about that. As the shoot went on and I was beginning to sort of gain a little bit more confidence, I was able to sort of look outwardly and really sort of respond to that. And I think the school sequences shooting in Salzburg was just crazy. The detail in that building, because we shot in this Hotel Schloss, I think it's called, and by this huge lake, and shares a lot of sets with The Sound of Music, which is really cool. But inside, it isn't a school, but just the detail the art department put into making this thing feel like a functioning school, and the classrooms and the paper and the chairs and the pens and everything. That was really, really cool to me. I think that's my favorite.
It did feel like an actual high class school. So it was very well done. I never can pronounce his name right, but the chemistry that you have with Iwan,
Iwan, yeah.
I love the dynamic that you two have throughout the film. What was it like developing that with him off camera as well as during production?
Yeah, super special. Iwan taught me so many amazing things, and he won't mind me saying, but I was quite a big fan of his. When I was about 13 years old, I was obsessed with this musical called Spring Awakening, which made its way over to London. And I think, if I'm right, was Iwan's sort of stage debut at the time. And I took the train with my older brother from Yorkshire down to London to see it specially. And I mean, I'm probably a bit too young to watch that show, but I just loved the music so much. So I'd known him since then, his work since then, and then into Misfits, and obviously, so on. So when I found out he was joining the film, I mean, I was so excited. I'm never afraid to tell someone when I'm a fan of what they've done. So I said that, and I told him, but ultimately, he really was like a big brother to me. He has so much experience, and I had such limited experience, and he was always so ready to share things with me, tips or tricks, or just what things meant, or how to navigate certain parts of a really busy set. And I'm super grateful for the time we had. So that sort of friend chemistry, or that bond, is super real. So that was really special.
That's amazing to hear, especially since he's always playing villains. It's nice to hear.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny, isn't it? Yeah.
But speaking of him and of busy sets, he obviously has experience with another high fantasy with Game of Thrones, and you yourself are now breaking into high fantasy television. Obviously, you were just on The Witcher, and now you're coming up in Shadow and Bone. Did you talk about his Game of Thrones experience at all, and try and gain insight to how to bring it into these other shows?
Yeah, I guess so. Definitely with the film, especially because there was so much VFX green screen work and running away from giant snakes, and just trust that goes into how big is this? How big are its teeth? How warm is it? All that kind of stuff. Which Iwan was with me for all of that, and was always able to give extra advice to what I was already getting. So I found out about Shadow and Bone later, because it feels like we shot this film so long ago now. Shadow and Bone feels still very imminent. It feels so present. It feels like, I mean, even that, we shot that a year ago nearly, but it's been such a huge sort of part of my life now for about a year. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what it all looks like.
What can you tell me about your role in this coming season? I know details are generally under lock and key, but yes. What kind of insight can you give me for this coming season?
Yeah, I can see like the like Netflix like sirens beginning to like the spoiler. No, but I think it's I play a character called Iwan Rheon, who joins a group of criminals and thieves called the Crows, joins them on a mission. And fans of the book will know him really well. He appears in 2 of the books of the Grisha universe sort of series called Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. But obviously the show adaptation of the book sort of weaves storylines together a little bit. So he gets to interact with a little bit more of the other world that he doesn't appear in, which is super exciting too. So there's lots of surprises for people who already know about Iwan, and for people who don't. He's hopefully pretty cool too. He's a bit of a nervous explosives expert. So that's Iwan.
Well, it sounds like a really interesting character to get to see in the future. But in the meantime, I really hope more people check out the Magic Flute as it comes out, because I think it's definitely got a lot in there for everybody. So, Jack, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I do
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good weekend.